It's time for a morning walk. Hello, my friends. I am going to try this in a vlog format, and you'll see what happens through the day. Today is March 31st, and it's the International Transgender Day of Visibility. Transgender Day of Visibility started 15 years ago. It was created by Rachel Crandall Crocker, who is a psychotherapist and the executive director of the advocacy group Transgender Michigan. So back in 2009, she wanted a reason to come together and feel joy with other members of the trans community. She says that at the time, the only holiday she knew of that was geared towards trans people was Transgender Day of Remembrance, which is on November 20th. And that is dedicated to honoring the lives lost to anti-transgender violence. So she said, I wanted a day that could focus on the living. And that's what turned into the International Transgender Day of Visibility. And it falls on March 31st every year. Crandall Crocker said she chose the springtime date because she wanted some distance from Transgender Day of Remembrance, as well as Pride Month, which happens in June. I'll just explain what's going on here. That is actually not coffee in that nabob container. I'm saving used dried tea leaves. So I'm just adding the previous couple of days of tea leaves to that container. I use the tea leaves in the natural dyeing that I do. It's part of the mordant process when I am preparing cellulose fibers like cotton and linen to take natural dyes. So that's what's happening there. And now I'm going to put some tea in the pot for my morning tea. 3 spoonfuls of Assam black tea. And today I decided to add a little bit of lavender as well, just maybe a 1/4 teaspoon. My plan for the day is anytime I pick up something to read or listen to, it is going to be created by a transgender or non-binary person. On my tablet, I've got comics, trans and non-binary comics. It is called The Outside. A whole bunch of different creators have contributed to that. And then I've pulled this stack off my shelves. Some of these I've read, some I've not. I'm going to dip in and out throughout the day onto those. I've got my pot of tea. I'm going to start reading. Okay, first book. Steadfast by Ali Blythe. Blythe is a trans man who lives here in Victoria, BC. This is his 3rd work of poetry. I've got Hymnswitch here, and I'm sure we have Twoism somewhere in the house, his first book. Back in 2016, when Blythe was at the Edmonton Poetry Festival, my partner Lori was on the same panel stage at one of the events. So this year at Planet Earth Poetry at Russell Books, Lori was at the open mic and Ali Blythe was one of the featured readers, and that's when we picked up Steadfast. This is the second time that I have read it cover to cover. The book has got this wonderful conceit. What Blythe has done is taken a poem by John Keats, The Last Sonnet, and the entire sonnet is here because the first lines of every poem in this book are pieces of that sonnet. The poems are about what stays and what's transient. And all of these flags are from when Lori read it, and it was quite cool to see which poems and which lines really struck her imagination. And lines like, "Do you remember that one night, cry after cry poured out of the hills? After a time alone, the coyotes were conjuring each other." When I flip through this, I keep finding lines that strike me. This is such a gorgeous collection of poetry, and even the physical object. The imprint is Ice House Poetry. It's published by Goose Lane, and even the paper is this thick, creamy linen paper. It's a joy to hold, a joy to read, and I highly recommend it. Steadfast. Time for some breakfast, so I went out and gathered a few bits of dandelion. The flower buds of dandelion are my absolute favorite. Got some lovage, some oxalis, some cress, and I'm gonna chop it all up and mix it with cream cheese to have with bread. If you're not particularly fond of bitter tastes, try dandelion with cream cheese, or else something like mashed potatoes or mashed sweet potato, and that helps to make it less bitter and get your palate used to it. This loaf of bread is from our local bakery, Fry's, and it's made from winter wheat grown in Saanich community that's right next to Victoria, and even the butter in this bread is from Saanich, so it is hyper local. Okay, breakfast is ready. Now I'm going to start reading from Trans and Non-Binary Comics, The Outside. I'm about a quarter of the way through this anthology of trans comics. The foreword is by Julia Kay, and I have talked about one of her memoirs in comics before, My Life in Transition. It's really good, very funny. One of the creators anthologized in this collection is Jam Aiden, who lives in Copenhagen. He says, the road to self-acceptance hasn't been that linear. Not that you need a label, but I've landed on non-binary trans man, and it's been hard to get here. Trying to talk. Cat's in the way. So he writes, I'm not sure people around me realized just how much I tried to live up to the expectations of what a real man is. But over the past few years, I've come to realize that I'm not happy with the amount of femininity society allows me to express as a man. I've accepted that I can transition to be a feminine man. Holding myself to the unwritten rules of society isn't helping anybody. I'd rather challenge the world head on and be too much to swallow. So I'll wear my jewelry and put on all the flowers that I want in my hair, and people might ask me, what's the point then? But instead of pretending I don't know what they mean, I'll tell them to be happy. What else? Isn't that great? Just a quick check-in. We have guests coming over shortly. I made some ice cream, 3 different flavors of ice cream actually, and we're gonna have some cake and hot cross buns, little treats like that. While I was getting stuff ready and cooking lunch, I was listening to the Tea for Tea podcast. This is now defunct, but you can still find all 14 episodes online, so I will include a link below. Hazel Jane Plante interviewed trans authors for each episode, and the one that I just listened to is her interview with Raika Aoki, who is the author of Light from Uncommon Stars, a fabulous, fabulous novel, and other books as well, but that's the only thing of hers that I have read. And next, I'm going to listen to Hazel Jane Plante's interview with Cheng Tom, because I have one of her books set aside to read today, and I will get to that later. It's the next day. But I'm going to sum up the rest of my Trans Day of Visibility. I continued with my plan, but we had guests that came at 3 and left at 4:30 and brought gifts of some peony plants, which I wanted to get into the ground, so I planted. And then my niece and her boyfriend stopped in and filled me in on all their adventures surfing for the past week at Tofino, and they had some gorgeous photos as well. They had fantastic weather while they were there. So here's my summary. I finished Steadfast, talked about that earlier in the video. I finished reading Falling Back in Love with Being Human by Chang Tom. More about this in a minute. I got just a bare start on these letters, Care Of by Ivan Coyote. Read the first one, and I got halfway through The Outside, Trans and Non-Binary Comics. It's a collection of 29 different autobiographical stories about self-acceptance and coming out as trans. Now, one of the stories, the one by Mateo Montero Murillo, who's a trans Mexican artist, in his story, he's looking back on the time when he did his confirmation in the Catholic Church when he was a girl of 9. And he was looking at a photograph and he said, it was distressing looking at the young me who went silent out of anxiety, but I couldn't cry. As life-saving as testosterone has been for me, it made using my old ways to reach catharsis impossible. And so that mention of the effect of testosterone came up in the letter that I read from Care Of. So this is from a trans man named Ace, who says, after 15 years of testosterone's effects, I cannot cry. And he's talking about a particular pain here that's caused by the divide that he sees between trans men, binary and non-binary individuals. A really interesting letter. And okay, back to falling in love with being human. The other thing that I did was I listened to 2 episodes of Tea for Tea, where Hazel Jane Plante talks to trans writers. And I listened to the Raika Aoki episode and the one with Chang Tom. Cheng Tom has written all kinds of books, including 2 picture books, From the Stars in the Sky to the Fish in the Sea, and For Laika, the Dog Who Learned the Name of the Stars. She's written a fabulous novel, Fierce Femmes and Notorious Liars, and a great collection of poetry, A Place Called No Homeland, a collection of essays, I Hope We Choose Love, a trans girl's notes from the end of the world. And I read all of them, enjoyed all of them. So when I saw that Cheng Tom had a new book coming out, I pre-ordered it. I don't do this very often, but I was very excited. I still have the receipt from Glass Bookshop, August 1st, 2023. But then when it came and I saw the format, it's kind of poetic letters addressed to different individuals and groups. To the fantasy man I still long for, to all the boys I've loved who didn't love me back, to Jesus Christ, to the runaways, to the martyrs, to the animorphs, to the trans exclusionary radical feminists, to J.K. Rowling, and so on. Sending out love, sending out so much love. And I like these entries in the book. They're written without capitalization. Here's an example from To the Compulsive Caregivers. People are always telling that story about the statue who came to life because she loved a man. Let me tell you a secret. She came to life because she wanted to live. It's time to be curious about what lives in the ocean of you beyond the island of other people's needs. Caregiver, are you curious? What if I told you you don't need to heal others to heal yourself? You can just heal yourself. So that's pretty much the tone of the book. But after each one of those sections, there's a kind of like a therapy to-do thing. Just a quick thing like this. Make a list of 5 good things that you frequently do for other people within a 2-week period. Do them all at least once for yourself. And when I first got this book last year and I saw those self-help kind of things at the end, it just turned me off. Just not my thing. So I set this aside, and I'm really glad that I picked it up, especially for this day of trans visibility. She plays with words a lot in the section on to the Church of Social Justice. She's talking about how there's infighting within activist politics. She says, not a social justice warrior, but a social justice wanderer, a social justice wanderer, somebody, anybody. Grant this girl sanctuary. I have questions about heaven. I have questions about the revolution. Those questions are the same. Upon whose bones do you intend to build your paradise? She has an epigraph from Mary Oliver. You do not have to be good. I love that line so much. Yeah, so I am glad that I got to falling in love with being human. Falling back in love with being human. So I'm going to wrap this up here. I will end with a little bit of decorating that I did because March 31st also was Easter, so I put out the pasanki that I decorated, well, a small sample. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope that you will continue to explore the fabulous writing by trans authors. Trans Girl April is a thing. Keep on reading throughout April and throughout the year because there is so much to choose from. I'll see you all soon in my next recent reads. Bye for now.